Revealed, the devil's top trap, a sin confirmed by Jesus that leads to hell in just 40 days. In the quaint village of St. Michael's, where every cobblestone whispered tales of saints and sinners, darkness crept stealthily into the heart of one devoted mother, Sarah. Her son David, once a beacon of faith with a radiant smile, had turned. He now ventured into the shadows, lured by an allure of rebellion that threatened to consume him. With the joyous whispers of prayer replaced by the echo of silence, Sarah's heart ached with worry, as if the very light of her home had dimmed. It was the season of Lent, the beloved retreat drawing near, when families gathered in the centuries-old church adorned with vibrant stained glass, casting celestial rainbows onto eager hearts. Yet, within Sarah, a tempest brewed. "What if he is trapped, Lord?" she whispered, her words a plea. The village buzzed with anticipation for renewal, but for Sarah, a dread loomed, the fear that David's soul was ensnared by the devil's snare, one of sloth and despair, a sin that Jesus warned leads to eternal darkness. Father Thomas, a wise pastor with eyes that twinkled like stars caught in the firmament, comforted her. "Do our prayers still matter?" Sarah's voice trembled. "Every prayer is a thread that binds, my dear," he replied, lifting her chin. "God hears each cry. Miracles are born of faith." His words shimmered in Sarah's heart, a flicker of hope mingling with the weight of her anxiety. As the days danced toward the Lenten retreat, David felt the crushing weight of family expectations. Every prayer meeting, every whispered scripture felt like chains binding him to a life he no longer claimed. Why is it wrong to explore? He seethed to himself. But as shadows deepened on the eve of the retreat, everything changed. A car screeched, metal crunched, and in a gruesome moment of recklessness, David found himself in an accident that should have taken his life. But instead of slipping into darkness, he was enveloped by blinding light. An angel, ethereal and radiant, spoke with a voice like cascading water. "You are not lost, David. They seek you, and heaven awaits your return." At that moment, a profound peace washed over him, pushing back the terror that had sought to consume him. A path to redemption unfurled like a blossoming rose beneath the sun. Meanwhile, oblivious to the spiritual battle raging for her son's soul, Sarah gathered fellow parishioners in fervent prayer at the church, where the scent of burning candles mingled with whispered hopes. Each prayer rose like incense, a collective cry for divine mercy. "Save him, Lord. Draw him back to light." Tears fell, but within the storm of fear, there was a unified strength, a bond forged not just in despair but also in faith. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the Lenten retreat dawned, Sarah sensed a shift. Was it the power of prayer? The palpable presence of the community? Or perhaps, the stirring spirit within David, teetering along the brink, at last willing to listen? The tension thickened, as hope battled despair, and the villagers waited with bated breath, their hearts knit together in anticipation. Would David grasp the lifeline tossed to him by heaven, or would he remain ensnared by the dark grip of his own rebellion? Deep within the silence, the sacred questions of faith and salvation hung in the air, begging for divine intervention in the lives of the faithful. As dawn broke over St. Michael's, a soft golden light spilled through the church's stained glass, bathing the congregation in hues of hope. The faithful mothers, fathers, and children gathered, each heart a vessel of prayer, each voice a testament of unwavering faith. Sarah stood at the altar, surrounded by the warmth of her community, yet her heart remained tethered to David, the son she longed to rescue. "Lord, let this be the day," she whispered, kneeling in silent supplication. Around her, the villagers echoed phrases of devotion, their breaths mingling in a harmonious chorus, weaving a net of spiritual strength over the gathering. Father Thomas took his place behind the pulpit, his voice rising like a gentle wave. Today, we come together not just as a community, but as a family united in Christ. Let us open our hearts for transformation. As the service unfolded, David awoke in an unfamiliar place, the remnants of darkness clashing with bright memories. The light he had witnessed before filled his room like a warm embrace. Am I dreaming? He wondered, glancing around as sunlight poured through the window, illuminating dust particles swirling like tiny angels. Yet, the bliss was short-lived. The weight of his past decisions tugged at him, memories of rebellion flashing like vivid snapshots in his mind. He clenched his fists, a fierce struggle waging within him. Is this peace worth the fight? He pondered. With every heartbeat, the angelic voice echoed in his mind, urging him to return. Would he heed it? Back at the church, Sarah felt a stirring as she closed her eyes. Lord, reach him. Let him back, she proclaimed, her voice trembling with belief. The words fell like soft raindrops, each one a seed of faith planted in the fertile ground of God's promise. During the homily, Father Thomas shared a parable of the lost sheep, emphasizing the relentless love of the shepherd who searches until every lost one returns home. For any who have strayed, know this, he said, eyes scanning the faces before him. You are sought after, loved beyond measure. God desires your return to him. His words wrapped around Sarah like a warm cloak, infusing her with renewed hope. Suddenly, David stirred in his bed, the angel's message resounding louder in his thoughts. Slowly, he sat up, still cloaked in the shimmering veil of light. What do I do? He asked the silence, extending his hand, longing for guidance. It was in this moment of vulnerability that clarity washed over him. He had to face the fears he had avoided. The road to healing required not just a desire for change but the courage to act on it. As the retreat progressed, Sarah sensed a shift in the air. The faithful began to speak of visions and revelations. Whispers of his name floated like autumn leaves, carried by hearts clinging to hope. David is in God's hands, one elder declared, and murmurs of affirmation rippled through the crowd. Come back to us, David, Sarah prayed, the words spilling from her heart. Then, in stark contrast to the serenity of the church, David stepped outside, where the world echoed with recklessness. He felt a nudge, an unseen force pushing him toward the church. Would he take that first step back home, not just to the church, but to the love of his mother and the grace of redemption? Outside the warm embrace of spiritual nurturing, the reality of his choices loomed large. As he stood at the edge, fear clawed at him. But the light within him flickered just enough to remind him of the promise each loss can be a new beginning. In the stillness of the church, just before the congregation began to sing a hymn of hope, a profound moment flickered into being. Could today be the day David chose to return? Would the light in him outshine the shadows? As the first notes filled the air, a silent prayer united hearts, all awaiting the arrival of the one who was lost. And as the last echoes hung in the air, an unexpected knock reverberated through the wooden doors of the church, drumming with possibilities. What awaited them all on the other side? As Father Thomas raised his hands in prayer, the congregation fell silent, hearts drumming softly in anticipation. The knock echoed again, firm and urgent. Sarah turned, a spark igniting within her chest. Could it be, she murmured, her heart racing as hope mingled with anxiety. The reverent hush enveloped the church, a stillness where souls held their breath in the presence of an unfolding mystery. Father Thomas approached the doors, a gracious expression on his face. Let us see who seeks us, he said, pulling open the heavy wooden door. Light streamed in, illuminating the stooped figure standing on the threshold. David, with weary eyes and a face etched by remorse, stood beneath the archway. For a heartbeat, time stood still. The sinister shadows of his past flickered in the air between them. David! Sarah's cry broke through the stillness, an eruption of joy and disbelief flooding her being. She rushed forward, wrapping her arms around him. It was as though the heavens themselves recognized a divine moment, a soul returning home. Tears escaped David's eyes, more than just relief, it was the flood of guilt, the weight of a journey he dared not return to face. "I'm sorry, Mom," his voice cracked, each word an act of repentance. "I didn't know how to come back. I've waited for you," she whispered, rocking him gently, her heart beating rhythmically in time with the congregation's rising song of praise. They enveloped him, a tide of love washing over the brokenness that once kept him away. Father Thomas stood witness, filled with grace as he guided David to the front of the congregation. "Listen, dear brothers and sisters," he declared, looking upon the gathered flock. "This is what our faith is built upon: the lost are found, the broken made whole." His voice rose in strength, bolstered by the spirit of unity filling the air. As David felt the warmth of his community embrace him, a sense of disbelief began to lift. But then, a sudden uneasiness crept upon him, and he glanced towards the exit, seeing shadows beyond the sun. "You can't outrun your past, can you?" a voice murmured from the back of his mind. It wrapped itself around him, dark and twisted, reminding him of the mistakes and temptations he thought he had left behind. Doubt seeped into his awareness, casting an unwelcome pall over his newfound peace. David clenched his fists, the struggle real and fierce. "I want to believe," he whispered, looking into the loving eyes of his mother and the grasping hands of his friends, all eager to embrace him fully. But the whispers echoed louder, pulling at his heart like a relentless tide. "Fear not," Father Thomas said, noticing David's internal battle. He stepped closer, his presence a beacon. "Remember, even the strongest winds can't shake a foundation built on faith. Doubt may stalk, but it cannot devour. We are here with you." As the hymn surged forward, a realization dawned on David: he was more than the sum of his mistakes. Every soul here was fighting their own battles. Each note of the hymn felt like a lifeline, an invitation to rise above darkness. Yet, beneath that, stirred a sense of urgency, a realization that true freedom doesn't simply come from returning but from confronting what haunts him. "What if I can't let go?" he thought, the specter of his past tightening its grip. With that thought, David took a step back toward the altar, enveloped in anxious longing. "Father, I want to surrender," he called out, a tremor of resolve weaving through his words. Just then, a flicker of light caught his eye, literally and metaphorically, as if the heavens turned their gaze toward him. Yet, would he truly step into the light? The congregation held its breath, hearts beating, longing to witness a breakthrough. What would David discover on the journey of surrender? Could the shadows of his past really be dispelled by the mercy of the present? And would the path he would choose illuminate his heart or plunge it back into despair? A wavering note in the hymn floated in the silence, beckoning for an answer. David stood at the altar, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that danced around him. The air felt thick with expectation, every soul present hanging on his steadfast resolve. The hymn still played softly, a reminder of hope, persistence, and divine embrace. "Father," he repeated, his voice trembling yet stronger, "I want to surrender myself to God's mercy." As the word settled, silence enveloped the church, deeper than the space between breaths. Sarah stepped closer, her eyes glistening with tears. "You're not alone, my son. We all walk our own paths of surrender. Trust in this moment." Something in her voice pierced through David's turmoil. He felt a flicker of strength. "There is power in vulnerability," whispered Father Thomas, sensing the shift in David's heart. He clasped his hands together in prayer, encouraging the congregation to lend their faith, to weave a web of unity around the man who had returned. Just then, a rush of wind swept through the open door, sending a gust that made the candles flicker erratically. David took a deep breath, its coolness sweeping through him like fresh spring air. A feeling of warmth bloomed in his chest, pushing against the shadows that wanted to keep him shackled. "Let me tell you something," Father Thomas continued, his voice gentle yet firm. "Our fears want to hold us back. They remind us of failures and transgressions. But the moment we acknowledge them before God, they lose their power." As he spoke, David began to feel a weight lift, the truth of those words settling deep within. Could it be that freedom was just an embrace away? An embrace not just from his mother or friends, but a divine embrace. The whispers of doubt tried to creep back in, but they felt less persuasive somehow. Sometimes, we believe we must have it all figured out before approaching the altar, Father Thomas continued, eyes locked on David, but God already knows everything that binds us. The beauty of surrender lies in laying all burdens upon him. His words resonated like a ripple across a pond, reaching into David's heart. Each ripple smoothed the rough edges of anxiety, revealing a tender yearning for healing. What if I allowed God to lead the way, he pondered, as light danced at the corner of his vision, a beckoning. I choose to surrender, David finally declared, his voice resolute and rising above the hymn. The congregation responded with a stirred excitement, an affirmation of their shared humanity and faith. But could he truly accept the grace waiting for him, the grace that would gather up all the fragments of his life? The darkness from his past still loomed on the periphery, shapes unresolved stirring in his heart. The tremors of fear were still there, but now they were met with whispers of hope and love. David knelt, lowering his head and surrendering it all, the shame, the fear, the pain. Father, help me see your light beyond the shadows, he prayed softly, feeling the warmth of the congregation wrap around him like a protective cloak. As he spoke, a flicker of light enveloped him, illuminating the space with an ethereal glow. The voices of the hymn crescendoed, lifting higher, rising like heavenly spirits. This was not just a moment of surrender but also a sacred promise, a promise of change. The shadows that had pursued him didn't vanish entirely, but something shifted. As he allowed himself to feel the love and acceptance that flowed from each person gathered, David began to understand. He wasn't alone. He was a part of something greater, a community woven together by trials and triumphs, each soul seeking redemption. As the last notes of the hymn lingered, David felt a swell of newfound courage blooming within him. But with this courage came a question, deep and profound: what next would this journey of surrender require from him? He lifted his gaze back to Father Thomas, questioning whether the surrender he offered could truly shatter the chains of his past. The congregation waited, hope shimmering like the distant lights, hearts collectively hoping for a miracle. What would come to light next, as David stood at the crossroads of his renewed faith? The glow of the candlelight flickered warmly around David as he knelt there, surrounded by a precious community. Each face reflected back the same yearning for freedom, for grace. Together, they breathed in the sacred stillness. The moment of surrender was not merely personal, it became a shared experience, one that resonated deep into the hearts of everyone present. Father Thomas stepped forward, his voice steady yet soft, cutting through the silence like a gentle hand on a shoulder. What you feel now, David, is the first whisper of change, he said, a glimmer in his eyes. When we open our hearts and lay our burdens down, the Lord fills that space with His Spirit. Expect Him to move. The congregation nodded in agreement, murmurs of amen floating through the air. Each one of them knew this journey. They had scars, too, stories etched into their very souls. David sensed their strength, a warmth wrapping around him, urging him to look deeper within. What if I let go of everything? He thought suddenly, almost alarmed by the clarity of the question. The very idea sent a shiver through his core, raising both fear and hope. What lay beneath those layers of hurt and doubt? He needed to know. Dear friends, Father Thomas continued, raising his arms, David is taking a brave step towards the light. Let us pray together, binding ourselves in love and faith. Heads bowed, hearts aligned, the salty taste of tears flooded David's eyes. He felt the weight of expectations lift momentarily, replaced by the tender embrace of divine love. Each heartbeat echoed a reminder that he need not walk alone. Lord, they prayed in unison, pull our brother from the depths of his fears. Show him the path you've set before him. And just like that, a surge of Holy Spirit filled the room, a divine current that swept away the last vestiges of doubt. David's heart raced, thundering against his ribcage, as if awakening from years of slumber. In his mind's eye, he envisioned his past, the guilt, the mistakes, the relentless grip of shame. But with each exhaling breath, he felt those memories begin to shift. They could be transformed. The light flickering around him intensified, illuminating corners of his heart that had long been hidden in darkness. "I can be more than my past," he breathed softly, his voice gaining strength. "I can rise above." Father Thomas approached, laying a hand on David's shoulder. "What you have done tonight is begin a journey, my son. It won't always be easy, choices loom ahead. But take heart when you stumble, the grace of God will catch you." David looked up, the fiery glow of hope igniting in his chest. He locked eyes with Sarah, whose unwavering love poured into his spirit. "I will face what comes next," he declared, the clarity of purpose filling his words. "With faith, I choose to believe in a brighter future." As they completed the prayer, a profound silence draped the church, a reverent hush settling over everyone. The final notes of the hymn lingered like a tender reminder of the beauty in surrender and the power of collective faith. "Tonight marks the beginning, David," Father Thomas said, a knowing smile touching his lips. "What will your journey be? What will you build upon this foundation of trust?" Outside, the air stilled, and the stars began to twinkle like blessings above. David's heart beat in rhythm with the universe, brimming with anticipation. Would he embrace the unknown? "Dear Lord, lead me forth." What adventures lay ahead in this journey of faith? The answers awaited just beyond, and in that moment, David was ready to discover them. With the soft hum of prayers still resonating in David's heart, he felt an inexplicable pull towards the open door of the church. It beckoned him, a pathway lit by stars. Stepping outside into the cool night air, he inhaled deeply, filling his lungs with the scent of fresh rain and blooming honeysuckle. Nature itself seemed to echo his newfound sense of possibility. As David walked, thoughts danced through his mind, swirling like leaves caught in a gentle breeze. What would he encounter on this journey of faith? Would the shadows of his past continue to chase him, or would they fade under the brilliant light of grace? He took solace in the fact that he was not alone. Each member of his community had walked similar paths, navigating trials with faith as their guiding light. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. A figure emerged from the darkness ahead. It was Sarah, her silhouette wrapped in the soft glow of the street lamps. She approached him, a radiant smile lighting up her face, as if she carried the essence of the hope he now clung to. "David, there you are!" she exclaimed, enthusiasm filling her voice. "I could feel your spirit lifting inside. It's wonderful to see you embracing this new chapter." "I feel like I'm standing on the threshold of something amazing," he replied, his voice steady. "Yet there's a weight inside of me. Can you sense it? It's as if there's more to discover, more to confront." Her smile softened into an understanding gaze. "It's the truth we often fear. Growth often requires the unveiling of what's hidden in our hearts. But know this, we are all walking the path of discovery. You can share your journey with me, and together, we will support each other." As they continued walking, their conversation ebbed and flowed, stories of their lives weaving together. David shared the burdens he had carried, the guilt from choices that still haunted him, the loneliness that accompanied his past mistakes. Each confession felt like a weight dropping away, a wave crashing upon the shore. "You know," Sarah said thoughtfully, "sometimes the things we think will anchor us actually hold us back. It's in laying those burdens down that we find true freedom. What happened in there tonight is just the beginning. God has so much prepared for you. But what happens if I fail?" David questioned, a tremor in his voice. "What if I can't live up to the hope that's been placed in my heart?" They paused, allowing the stillness of the night to envelop them. Sarah stepped closer, looking deep into his eyes. "Failure is part of the journey. It can teach us, shape us, refine our hearts. Remember, even the most faithful walk may include stumble and strife. But grace surrounds us every single step of the way." A flicker of fear battled in David's heart, but in that moment, he felt the creeping shadows recede. He realized that it was not about perfection but the willingness to rise every time he fell. They turned a corner, and before them lay the old community garden, once vibrant, now faded. This place, it was a sanctuary, David mused. And yet, it seems so neglected. Like a forgotten dream. Then let us bring it back to life, Sarah said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. Let us cultivate growth. Just like our faith, it requires care and devotion. The idea sparked something deep within him. David imagined the garden blooming again, each plant a seed of hope nurtured by faith. And even in the discouraging moments, each flower represented resilience born from grace. As night deepened, their conversation shifted towards dreams of renewal, of tending to the garden every day as a metaphorical anchor for their faith walk. David felt a rush of warmth envelop him. The light ahead was not just a distant hope, it was calling him into the present, challenging him to act and engage. But just as joy filled his heart, a subtle question took shape. What if the burdens of his past collided with the excitement of his future? The looming mystery tugged at him. What old wounds, still hidden, might emerge in this pursuit of renewal? With dawn yet to break, David felt the stirrings of challenges ahead. What truth might he unearth that could threaten to derail his newfound passion? David stood at the edge of the community garden, his heart a mix of hope and trepidation. The air was thick with possibility, yet the shadows of his past loomed larger than ever. Each corner of the garden felt like a reminder of missed opportunities, of dreams once nurtured but left to wither. He took a breath, attempting to shake off the weighty sensations that threatened to anchor him to despair. What if he began, his voice trembling slightly? What if my past isn't just a part of me? What if it's a barrier that I can't seem to break through? Sarah tilted her head, her expression compassionate yet firm. Then let us confront it together. Just like we'll help the garden grow, we can till through the soil of your heart. What's lying beneath the surface might just be waiting for sunlight to break through. The idea intrigued him. How often had he buried his feelings, hoping they would just vanish? Yet, they multiplied like weeds, threatening any glimpse of beauty in his soul. Could facing his fears be the sunlight he needed? With a new sense of determination, David knelt down, placing his hands in the rich, cool earth. Let us start digging, he said, feeling lighter as he fought against the surfacing memories. I want to know what I'm dealing with. I've hidden these feelings for far too long. As they dug, the conversation flowed. David began unearthing not just dirt, but memories he thought he'd buried. He spoke of his father's disappointment, the feeling of inadequacy that whispered in his ear, the isolation he felt when friendships faded. Each confession felt like a seed planted, waiting for water and light. Sarah listened intently, offering nods of encouragement, her own heart resonating with his words. You know, David, even the strongest soil needs aeration to become fruitful. We all have scars that teach us. They shape us into who we are meant to be. A flicker of hope surged through him, igniting a vision of the garden blossoming with joy, flowers blooming in vibrant colors, singing praises of what once seemed impossible. What if I became a part of their growth? He wondered aloud. What if every flower represented a part of my healing? Yes. Sarah's eyes sparkled with excitement. And just like flowers take time, so does healing. We must nourish these truths with love and faith. As the night drew closer to dawn, David felt a sudden wave of emotion wash over him. Would the sunlight reveal something not just beautiful, but also painful? What if he found wounds still fresh beneath the surface, scars he feared to touch? It was easy to envision the vibrant blooms, but what of the thorns? What if, when the sun rises, I'm faced with something I can't confront? He murmured, his heart now tentative. Then we stand together, Sarah reassured him, her laughter like a soft bell in the stillness. We face it together and trust that healing is within our reach. In that moment, David was struck by a truth he had tried to overlook: healing required vulnerability. It demanded a willingness to embrace both the bright and the dark, to recognize the beauty in the honest and not shy away from the hurt. Feeling a divine peace settling within him, David looked at Sarah, finding in her presence the kind of encouragement he had never dared to seek. What if, through all this, we create a space for others to share their burdens too. Exactly. Sarah replied, her voice filled with enthusiasm. This garden could not only bloom for you but become a refuge for everyone seeking renewal. A community fully engaged in faith, willing to offer grace and growth. His heart soared as imaginations mingled with aspirations. This could be more than a garden. It could become a sanctuary of transformation, a testament to resilience and rebirth. But as the first light of dawn began to breach the horizon, another thought intruded, dark yet compelling. What if there were lingering fears that could shatter their dreams? What if the weight of past mistakes was stronger than any sunshine they could summon? David pondered how his own wounds might resist healing. Could they overshadow the hope perched on the edge of this new beginning? As they wiped the earth from their hands, David felt that this was only the start. What challenge awaited at the break of day, and what secrets would be unearthed when light illuminated the garden's depths? As the soft hues of dawn began to paint the sky, David peered at the garden, a sacred tapestry stretching out before him. The morning light seemed to breathe life back into the soil, wrapped in a golden embrace. Shadows trembled as they retreated, but remnants of whispered doubts lingered, much like stubborn vines refusing to let go. What if the sun reveals things I'm not ready to face? David's voice was just above a whisper, nerves crawling up his spine. His heart thudded heavily, echoing the fear of secrets long buried. Then we cultivate understanding, Sarah replied, her tone steady, guided by the gentle hand of faith. Just like nature, we too must grow through storms. Watering our pain can yield the sweetest fruit. She knelt by him, the strength of her spirit almost palpable. With trembling fingers, David brushed aside the dry leaves, unearthing encrusted memories. Each clump of soil pulled back felt like peeling away years of regret. The silence wrapped around them, a sacred moment where their faith intertwined, binding them against the chilling morning air. Look! Sarah exclaimed, her voice brightening like sunshine breaking through clouds. She pointed to a tiny sprout pushing through the earth, defying the weight above it. Just like this, we can break through. There's always hope, even when we think we're trapped. David felt warmth bloom within him. It was a reminder that, just like that sprout, he too could rise. But the scars they feel so fresh. They remind me of failures, of moments when I thought I wasn't enough, he admitted, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. Every scar tells a story, David, she reassured him, gently brushing a speck of dirt from his hand. Even our greatest struggles can lead us to divine grace. The Lord loves us despite our imperfections. Embracing her words, David began to open up. He shared the moments of defeat that had lingered like a dark cloud over him, the times when he felt he had failed himself and those he cared for. Each revelation felt like a weight lifting, yet the shadows threatened to slink back in as if testing his resolve. But Sarah remained there, her presence a reminder of faith and renewal. They spoke of dreams unfulfilled, each story revealing a piece of his heart. Like roots stretched deep in the soil, the sharing entwined them, fortifying their connection. As the sun rose further into the sky, its light illuminated the garden, drawing David's gaze to the heart of their labor. What if we give this garden a deeper purpose? He asked suddenly, inspiration sparking anew. What if we invite others to share their stories here, in this sacred space? Yes! Sarah exclaimed, her enthusiasm igniting a fire in David's heart. We can build trust and love here, a space where everyone feels safe to uncover their own truths. This garden can be a reflection of God's grace. Awash with optimism, they envisioned a gathering of souls each bringing their burdens, their stories, their scars. They could plant seeds of encouragement, nurturing each other's growth just as they tended the earth beneath their fingertips. If we allow faith to guide us, we can build a community that thrives on healing and hope, David breathed, awestruck by the possibilities. But can we trust that everyone will be ready to heal? Sarah's voice softened, the reality of vulnerability hanging between them. What if some carry the weight too heavily? What if they don't find their way to the light? The sun climbed higher, casting vibrant colors upon the landscape, yet David felt the weight of the clouds still in the corner of his mind. Are we strong enough to face whatever darkness still lingers, both in ourselves and in others? It was a valid fear, and as they stood amidst the budding flowers, David knew this journey was not merely about sunlight and growth, it was about embracing the entire spectrum of emotion. The sun may shine bright, but the shadows would lurk, waiting for their chance to entwine once more. Together, we will face whatever lies ahead, Sarah whispered, a soft promise fluttering like a breeze across their hearts. As they stood hand in hand, the air hummed with tension, anticipation, and light. They were ready, but what would be revealed as the garden flourished beyond its dawn? Would their hearts remain so open as the echoes of the past began to stir? With faith as their anchor, they braced themselves for what was yet to be uncovered. What lessons awaited them in the daylight? What divine clarity was destined to emerge? As the golden rays of sun cascaded over the garden, David felt a shift within him. The air crackled with anticipation, thick with promises of revelation. He took a deep breath, inhaling the aroma of fresh earth and new beginnings. With Sarah by his side, a smile crept onto his face, a fragile yet resolute bloom taking root in his heart. "Let us clear a space here," Sarah suggested, gently pointing to a patch of ground that lay before them. "This could be our gathering point, a sacred circle where souls can come together, share their burdens, and find strength in each other." David nodded, feeling the warmth of community already stirring in the air. They began to clear away the remnants of weeds and stones, their hands digging through the earth with purposeful intent. Each handful of soil felt like a small victory, an act of faith transforming not just the garden, but their very spirits too. With every rooted plant they unearthed, hidden truths seemed to emerge, intertwining their own stories with the tales of others waiting to be told. What if we provided a space not just for planting seeds in the ground, but for sowing acceptance and healing in our hearts? Sarah mused, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. "Exactly," David exclaimed, feeling a surge of hope. "Imagine people coming here to share their journeys, the struggles they carry, and the grace they've discovered along the way. It could be a movement, a sanctuary for the weary. But what about those who come burdened by shame?" Sarah's voice was gentle, but heavy with concern. "Some might feel unworthy to step into this light." David paused, the weight of that reality settling into his chest. "We have to remind them of God's love, that no one is beyond the reach of His grace. Our scars, our failures, each one can become a thread in the tapestry of hope we weave together," he spoke, passion rising in his voice. As they continued to work, they spurred each other on with ideas, envisioning evenings filled with stories and laughter, moments where healing could break through the darkness. The garden started to take shape, growing from a space of despair into one of hope, a patch of light in a world often shrouded in shadow. Just then, a soft rustle captured their attention. David turned to see a figure approaching, an elderly woman named Ruth from the neighboring house. Her face, like a map of her years, bore stories of trials and triumphs. "Hello, dear ones. I felt the stirring from my window and came to see what is happening," she said, her voice rich and soothing. "Ruth." Sarah greeted her warmly. "We're creating a community garden, a place for sharing and growing together." Ruth's eyes glimmered. "What a beautiful idea. But dear, remember, gardens take time. There will be storms, droughts, and unexpected weeds." Her words echoed in David's mind, a poignant reminder of the truth they were embarking on. "We know. But we're ready to face it all," he assured her, lifting his chin defiantly. "We believe love will overcome every obstacle." Ruth nodded, an approving smile creasing her face. "It's the resilience of your faith that will carry you through. Hold on to that unity, it will be your anchor when doubts arise." As they spoke, the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow that wrapped around them like a comforting quilt. David felt a warmth swelling in his heart, a sense of divine purpose sparkling in the community they were beginning to build. But even as joy flooded him, a flicker of unease crept into his mind. Would they truly be able to withstand the trials that lurked in the shadows, waiting to challenge their resolve? As if sensing his turmoil, Sarah's hand found his once more, grounding him. Together, we'll face whatever comes. Our faith is fuller in a community. With those words, David felt fortified. Yet a question loomed ahead: what storms would test their unity? What hidden burdens would be unveiled in this sacred space? As twilight descended, the garden shimmered under the fading light, full of promise and possibility but also uncertainty. The journey had begun, but where would it lead them? And how would their faith hold up against the darkness? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting deep shadows across the community garden, a palpable sense of anticipation filled the air. David stood by the freshly turned soil, heart racing as he and Sarah prepared for the first gathering. They had invited villagers to share their stories of struggle and triumph, and he felt both exhilarated and terrified. "Tonight is the moment we've been waiting for," Sarah said, her eyes shining with faith. "This garden is not just about planting seeds in the ground, but also nurturing the seeds of hope in our hearts." David nodded, attempting to brush away the anxieties whispering in the back of his mind. What if no one came? What if those who couldn't find the courage to share their truths? He took a deep breath, feeling the grounding warmth of the earth beneath him, steadying his resolve. As twilight cloaked the garden in a purple embrace, familiar faces began drifting through the gate: Ruth, the elderly woman whose wisdom had already strengthened their spirits, young couples seeking connection, mothers, fathers, and children, each carrying their own burdens, each step echoing the rhythm of hope. "Good evening, everyone," Sarah called out, her voice ringing with warmth. "Welcome to our garden, a place where we'll grow together, and today, we begin sharing our journeys." The crowd moved closer, curiosity igniting the soft candlelight flickering among the rows of freshly tilled soil. With an expanse of courage, David stepped forward. "Thank you for being here. I know it can be daunting to reveal our struggles, but I stand before you, a testament to the healing power of community and faith." He felt a warmth spread through him. "Let this place be a refuge for our stories. Let today be a day where courage blooms like the flowers soon to blossom here." As he spoke, the crowd grew silent, their hearts aligning in the sacred space of vulnerability they were forming. David took a moment to catch his breath, his gaze sweeping across the gathering. There, he spotted familiar faces, each etched with stories yearning to be told. Ruth was the first to step forward, her hands trembling as she cleared her throat. "When I was your age, I felt utterly lost," she began. "Life threw everything it could at me: loss, grief, and shame. I thought I'd never rise again. But I learned to lean into my faith, and it became my lifeline. Each trial, each tear, taught me that just like this garden, I could flourish again." The crowd responded with murmurs of empathy. As Ruth spoke, David felt the shadows that plagued his heart begin to fade like clouds dispersing in the light. Her story resonated, the cyclical nature of growth mirrored in their shared humanity. One by one, others joined Ruth, each recounting their own journeys through storms of doubt, the weight of regret, and the illumination of grace. David listened, tears pooling in his eyes as pieces of their lives interwove, forming a beautiful tapestry of resilience. The beauty of each story lit up the garden. The shadows he feared had transformed into flickers of hope, illuminated by honesty, a genuine connection that welcomed healing. Then, unexpectedly, a young man from the village stood. "I'm Marco," he admitted, his voice quivering but steady. "I used to think faith was a crutch, a weakness. I got lost in the chaos of seeking pleasure and distraction, numbing pain instead of facing it. I felt hollow. But tonight, I see hope here, people willing to be real. I want to turn my life around." A glorious light filled the space. David's heart soared, a thread in the fabric of community woven tighter. As the evening wore on, laughter and tears mingled freely. They shared not only burdens but also dreams, hopes, and visions for a future where the garden could blossom into a sanctuary woven with faith and acceptance. Later, as the stars twinkled above, David stepped back, absorbing the warmth of family he never knew he had. Each story shared had planted profound roots of connection, grounding the garden in something far beyond soil love, compassion, and renewal. Suddenly, the sound of laughter twinkled in the air, joy buoying the hearts present. But then, a faint whisper broke through his thoughts, creeping doubt like an unwilling spectator. What happens next? Will they stay? Will this garden truly flourish? In that moment, he realized faith isn't a destination. It's the journey, the willingness to nurture not just a garden but a community, a space where transformation thrives. David took a deep breath, raising his voice to address the villagers. Tonight we have shared. Let us commit to this garden, to grow together not only in soil but in spirit. We will face storms together and celebrate victories. Let us cultivate trust within this place, a sanctuary where no one feels they stand alone. A chorus of amens filled the air, affirming his words. In that sacred moment, David felt a surge of divine energy wash over him, a radiant embodiment of newfound purpose. There would be challenges ahead, but in the light of this gathered faith, he knew they could weather any storm. As the last candle flickered in the gentle breeze, the villagers joined hands, forming a circle of unity surrounding the garden. Hearts entwined, they spoke words of hope and promise into the night, a pledge of solidarity and love. And with that, they stepped boldly into the future, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The whispers of possibility echoed through the garden, telling a story that was just beginning. Now, dear friends, it's time you take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss more exclusive faith stories and inspiring journeys. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help share these incredible experiences with many more in need. Comment your reactions and testimonies about this powerful ending. It's time to engage. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this manifestation of hope and love unfolding before them. You need to support this channel, because only true servants of God understand the importance of sharing these precious stories of faith. Don't wait even one more second.